Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry Podcast. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Seth Godin onto the podcast. Seth is the author, in my opinion, some of the best marketing books ever written. Purple Cow, This is Marketing, Linchpin, The Dip, The Practice, Icarus Deception, All Marketers Tell Stories. Your work, Seth, has had a huge impact on me. I think I said on the email, Linchpin really kind of changed our direction of what I was doing and got me on this path to food and now to the podcast Hungry. So I'm really excited to talk to you about, my favorite things in life are food, creativity, cooking, marketing, brands, restaurants, all those things. That jumble of things is my favorite thing to talk about. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll do our best. I am in favor of all those things too. In fact, I eat every single day, whether I need to or not.
So as I said, one of my fascinations is the parallels between creativity, marketing, and food. And David Ogilvy opens up Confessions of an Advertising Man with, I think he talks about his time working in a kitchen in Paris in Hotel Majestic. And he says, my time there taught me how to run an advertising agency. So I think the parallels between the two are super interesting. But what I want to open up with is a blog post. The date you wrote has actually escaped me, so my apologies. But it's called Two Kinds of Good Cooks. One is very skilled at the following recipe: quality control, consistency, and diligence. The other understands how the recipe works, sees patterns and opportunities, and changes the recipe to fit the problem to be solved. It's about metaphor in addition to process. Both are useful. If you think this is a post about cooking, you might be the first kind of cook. So I think the opening gambit is I know you're a diehard cook. I know you've got a huge cookbook collection. What has cooking taught you about marketing?
Okay, so just for people who are just joining us, marketing is not advertising. Marketing is not hype. When David Ogilvy was an ad person, that's what marketing was. If you bought enough ads, you made enough money to buy more ads. That stopped working 20 years ago. So the marketing that I write about, the marketing that I do, is how do we show up in the world with a true story that touches people, that changes people, that spreads? And sometimes that story takes the form of a jingle, but usually it takes the form of an experience, a product, the way it changes us. And cooking is this fascinating shortcut because everybody needs to eat. And our taste buds have several functions. One of them is to keep us from eating poison, but another one is to shortcut straight through our conscious brain, directly to our amygdala, and excite us and please us and sate us. So when you create a meal, whether it's how you make your makhni dal, but more than that, how you serve it, what the room is like, who else is sitting at the table, what the lighting is like, all of that is a project, and it is there to change someone, at least for a little while. And then the meal is over. And so one of the reasons that I became someone who cooks every single night is I'm a project person. Lots of my projects last a long time. The idea that I can do a 2 or 3 hour project and be done, that's nice too.
You said change for a little while. I think that's fascinating. I think when you go and have a meal and you stay present and you're in that moment, there's a visceral change for that small moment in time. In terms of brands, how what's the role brands play in kind of changing people's small moment for a little while in their everyday?
Well, a brand is not a logo. A brand is a promise. It is the shortcut that we have to an experience. So if we have felt a certain thing about, this chef's jacket or Nike shoes or the way Pop-Tarts smell, and then it comes back, we get to feel it again instantly. So what a brand does is it makes the experience you're paying for worth more. If it's not worth more, then it's not a brand. It's just a logo.
Yeah, I think you talk a lot about, I think I heard you say somewhere about if Nike created a hotel, you'd know what it is. But if the Hyatt Regency created a shoe, you wouldn't know what it looks like. I thought that's a beautiful way of putting it. in terms of that storytelling and with all your work, I've kind of absorbed over the many years is the stories can get ideas to spread. If you tell the crux of a story, your idea can spread. And I want to talk about a cookbook. I don't know if you've heard of it, called Salt, Fat, Acid, and Heat
Sure.
by Samin Nosrat. I hope I've said that right. But why I love that is it's the kind of the four principles. You put salt, fat, acid, heat together in a myriad of different ways, and you're going to get a great, delicious recipe. And I'd love to explore what kind of the salt, fat, acid, heat principles of storytelling are for brands. Now, imagine and I know for a fact a lot of our listeners, say they're a Korean street food truck under London Bridge, for example, do the most wonderfully fantastic Korean burgers, for example, but they can't get that idea to spread. Last week, I was up in Manchester doing an interview with a young couple who do these outrageously kind of weird, lurid color Easter eggs. They look kind of like the Easter eggs based on David Bowie. Actually, is kind of strange. Or maybe say you're like a kombucha brand in Dublin who's trying to get going. There's so many delicious products, but they don't have the story to help the idea spread. So what would you say is the salt, fat, acid, heat to kind of get your idea to spread? Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Honestly, means the absolute world to me. I'd be so grateful for a small favour, please. It is so hard growing a YouTube channel. It is so bloody hard. If you please enjoy these videos, just click the subscribe button. More subscribers equals bigger guests equals better conversations, and hopefully you can learn more as you build your food and drink brand. Thank you so much.
That's a cool metaphor. I guess I would divide it into two categories. The first category is accepting that attention is scarce and trust is rare. You are not entitled to my attention. When you try to steal it, that's spam. It doesn't work. Attention is more scarce than ever before, and most people don't want to offer their attention to someone new. And trust, in a world of hype and scam, most people aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So we begin by saying, if you are bringing something new to the world, it's not for everyone. It has to be for the smallest viable audience. The few people who want something new, not everyone. Because even though everyone eats, everyone doesn't actually want to go to a food truck on a bridge and eat a burger they've never had before. So that's the first two pieces. And that's where permission marketing kicks in. When people are eager to hear from you, and the concept of the Korean food truck blew up in LA. And the way it happened was he built a following. I think it was on Twitter, but maybe by email. And you didn't know what corner he was going to be on unless you were on the list. But once he had the list and he had a group of people who trusted him, who were paying attention, everything else gets easy because he's not making food for everyone. He's making food for them. And then the second path that I would talk about, which is more, amorphous, is people are only driven by three things. Once we have a roof over our heads and decent health, we're only driven by three things: fear, affiliation, and status. Fear is obvious, right? If an asteroid is about to land on your house, it's very hard for you to focus on taking a drum lesson. You're afraid. Affiliation is who's to my left, who's to my right. What are people like me doing? Who am I in sync with? And that's one reason why people listen to your podcast, because people like us do things like this. We like to be able to talk to each other about what we heard. And the third one is status. Does this move me up or does this move me down? Did I get a seat at Noma before they closed, right? That is not about delicious. That is about status. And it doesn't have to be expensive for it to be status. You gain status by seeing that Easter egg that other people didn't get to see. And it wasn't about the money. It was about the access. So when I put those two things next to each other, what makes a story spread is it in my interest as a consumer to tell my friends about it? If it isn't, I won't. It's that simple. And so I tell people about Sean Askenosi's chocolate all the time. Why do I do that? So I almost started a chocolate company. I'm very drawn to bean to bar chocolate. I didn't do it because Sean makes quite delicious chocolate, and he's a better human than me. He has open book management. He only sells direct. He visits the farmers in the Philippines and Tanzania every year. He brings underprivileged kids with him to visit the farms. He puts the kids in these villages to private school. I mean, he's just a mensch. And so I will, every year around Halloween, talk about don't buy cheap chocolate, but I will also promote Sean's chocolate. It might not be the single best chocolate bar I ever had. That's not why I'm talking about it. I'm talking about it because it increases my affiliation and my status. My affiliation, because now I'm in sync with people I'm proud to be in sync with. And my status, because I know something other people don't know yet. My status, because once people do hear the story or read his book or taste his chocolate, they're like, wow, thanks, Seth. I'm really glad that you were a pioneer and introduced me to that. So I'm not doing it selfishly, but it spread because it was easy, useful for me to talk about. I talk about the Poulain Bakery in Paris because Apollonia is a friend, and because it has never failed to increase my affiliation and status when I share it with other people. But there are other things in my food life that are hard for me to talk about, and so I don't, because they risk my status or they risk my affiliation, and it's not generous for me to bring it up because it's awkward. So I don't.
So it's essentially the attention and the trust for the smallest viable market to begin with is kind of the path one. Path two, and I suppose getting that part right for people listening to this is kind of point one. And then you can get that story to spread on fear, affiliation, and status. And I think, the David Bowie Easter egg example is kind of that, because it was like I was looking at these crazy Easter eggs, like wow, and I suppose affiliation and status. Say someone is, again, whether it's a food brand who's selling, I don't know, up in Derbyshire selling marmalade, for example. Product is categorically, unequivocally the best tasting product, and they know this attention, trust, smallest viable audience, and then the fear, affiliation, status. How do you create the emotion to link onto those things? Do you see what I mean? I think the emotion.
I totally understand. So let's do a case study. First of all, it's unlikely that it's unequivocally the best marmalade. Because
it might be. Yeah, okay. Yes. Yeah.
Because when you make a statement like that, you're saying one of two things. Either in a double-blind taste test, people always say this one is better. That's really hard to do with marmalade. Or you're saying, when I add the story, the jar, what I need to take to get it, for me, that makes it the best marmalade. That is totally achievable for some people, right? And so for me, for years and years, if you went to Henrietta's Pine Bakery, which I believe is now out of business on the way to Algonquin Park, Canada, between Toronto and the North Pole, you would have these little butter biscuits. They were the best butter biscuits in the world. What made them the best butter biscuits in the world is because it reminded me of camp, not because they were unequivocally the best ones, right? They fit into a story, a narrative. So if I've got that story, if this marmalade is made by monks who are all over 100 years old, and it comes with this, and it comes with this, and it's this, and that, now the story, I taste it when I taste the marmalade. Or perhaps they only make 600 jars a year and it costs $3,000 a jar, and I'm on the list and you can't get on the list because it's all sold out for the next 3 years. You want to taste some? That's a story, right? And so when we think about the brands in the UK that put the Queen's little emblem on them, what the heck does that mean? Who cares? The Queen has terrible taste in marmalade. Why do I care that the Queen's because of status, because of affiliation, right? You can see there's 100-year-old history here of branding of food products based on status and affiliation, the story, and how it makes us feel. But, and this is the huge but, most small food providers have as their unstated motto, you can pick anyone and we're anyone. If you're looking for marmalade, this is a little better or a little cheaper. Here, have some. That's not a useful story. That's a race to the bottom. And the problem with the race to the bottom is you might win.
I have just discovered a secret weapon. Please, please, please don't tell anyone. This secret weapon helps you get listed, stay listed, and most importantly, grow. This secret weapon is being used by absolutely banging brands like Bold Bean Co., Perfect Head, Neat, Trip, and Cheeky Panda. No wonder they're absolutely smashing it. But look, are you ready to get your mitts on this secret weapon and absolutely smash it too? I am thrilled, so thrilled to announce our brand new podcast partner, North Star. What is North Star, I hear you thinking? North Star is a monthly subscription to an online platform giving you access to category data, category insights, anytime, any place, anywhere. It's basically the Netflix for challenger brands. It levels the playing field. Why do you need category data? Well, the first thing is making your pitch speak the buyers and retailers language is so important. It's going to help you unlock more listings, unlock deeper distribution with existing clients, back the right NPD, and actually understand how your competition is performing. But the even better news, are you ready to rock and roll at your next range review? You no longer need to hire a full-time category manager. Instead, just parachute in North Star when your next Waitrose, Sainsbury's or Tesco range reviews coming up. They're your outsourced in-house partner. Save money. Their team will come in. They'll help you prep, plan and smash your next range review. I'm so excited to be partnering with North Star. Check them out in the episode description below. Delighted to announce the extension of our partnership with the wonderful Billy and Paul from Mackenzie Jones, but even more exciting, they have just launched a brand new brand as part of Mackenzie Jones called MKJ Ignite. MKJ Ignite is a recruitment firm which specializes full shebang focus entirely on challenge brand space. They work with some incredible brands, Lucky Saint, Goodrays, Purdy and Fig, Hunter and Gather, and Real Superfoods. They can support with your hiring needs across all levels, top to bottom, junior entry-level jobs, all the way through up to MD and CEO level. So if you're looking for a field sales stomper, a sales wizard, an ops guru, a supply chain sensei, you name it, MKJ Ignite can help you out. And look, if you're looking to wet your whistle, ignite your curiosity, then check out the poddy we recorded with them back in July. Laden with wisdom, all about like do's and don'ts of hiring and like how to create the perfect job description. You will love it. And to find that unique thing that isn't going to be a race to the bottom, that's going to be the smallest viable market, is that an inside job or is that an outside job in terms of speaking to consumers, or is it a combination of both? Like, how do you find that one thing?
You speak and speak and speak and listen and listen and listen to your smallest viable audience, but you don't ask them what they want. You just listen to what they do. You watch what they do. And then internally, you develop the empathy to imagine what would happen, right? So if I think about the last 15 years in the hot sauce business, there was Tabasco. There were Durkee Franks. This is in the US, 3 or 4 others. That was it. Now there are hundreds. And what these providers figured out is they had as much fun making the stuff as they did telling a story to a few people. This is the spiciest one of all time. This is this one. This is that one. You couldn't do that unless you hung out in barbecue joints. You couldn't do that unless you could find the empathy for the person who wanted to buy a certain kind of hot sauce. And so Dave's Insanity, built a multi-million dollar business. And then right over there is the sriracha guy. And his quirkiness, his refusal to trademark the thing, his ability to let people just steal what looks like his brand and ID, made his brand actually more valuable to a certain kind of person. And now lots of people in my country think that every restaurant in Vietnam has a jar of it on their table, even though it's not even sold in Vietnam as far as I can tell. But showing up for some people in a certain way repeatedly, that comes from the inside.
I want to talk about your tahini cookies, or very famous tahini cookies. I've actually seen these. They look. I
had one for breakfast this morning. I can't understand how you've ever seen them. Not from me, you haven't seen them.
Yeah, I do quite a bit of research, especially on the food angle. But I want to talk about. I think food can be kind of interesting in analogies for creative cultures and creative organizations. Like, this is a bit of a weird thing, so excuse me if this is a bit weird, but I really believe like a bowl of ramen is like analogous for what a great culture is. It's like, imagine that the egg is your sales department, your noodles are your finance department, your bit meat is your whatever, your operations department. Like, individually they're okay, but as soon as you pour the broth on, the broth is culture, that suddenly everything begins to alchemize and dance and galvanize. And I think that's a kind of an interesting thing for kind of creative cultures. But I'd love to know, you've worked with so many businesses and brands. Like, I'd love to know what tahini cookies taught you about building creative cultures.
Okay, well, first thing is, I've never done a day of consulting, so I don't really work with brands. I just notice things. Culture for me is more powerful than strategy, organizational design, or almost anything else. Culture is the way things are around here. So if you are a chef and you are building a restaurant based on fear, now you have a culture, and that culture is going to persist even after you leave. If you are Danny Meyer, you can build a restaurant empire worth billions of dollars on a different culture, a culture that's based on dignity and respect and connection. That if something goes wrong at a Union Square hospitality restaurant, the way it gets fixed is horizontal, not because there's some dictator telling someone they have to fix it, but because everyone else is leveling up everybody else's game. And so the ramen analogy sort of falls apart a little bit, because the departments aren't the point. The culture is the point. And particularly in food service, most people don't have a specific job as much as they have the desire and assignment to make it better for the person that they're serving. And there's lots of things built into hospitality that do that. So you don't want someone to say, that's not my job, I can't help you. What you want is a culture that says our job is to figure out how to make things better around here. So onto the tahini cookie. So if someone goes to Seth's.blog and types "where's the secret recipes," they can find all the recipes we're talking about here. Tahini cookies have 4 ingredients: almonds, sesame seeds, maple syrup, 1, 2, 3, and then salt and baking soda, which I count as 1. And that's all there is in them. You puree it. The tahini is basically sesame seeds. And then you bake them for 15 minutes in little golf-sized balls, maybe a little smaller. And I'm just hooked on them. I don't eat a lot of food nowadays. There's all these things that aren't on my diet. But these I can eat and I enjoy, and they make me smile. I think the magic is you could not eat any one of those ingredients more than a spoonful at a time. Right? Even a spoonful of maple syrup is probably more than most people can handle. But when I mix these ingredients together and add some heat, it's pretty delicious.
And I suppose to kind of pulling that into the marketing, if there's a marketing lesson, I like to ask weird questions, but I think there is something in those individual ingredients alchemizing together. In terms of, you said, I don't do consultancy, I notice and I watch and I see. I'd love to talk about Danny Meyer, or Danny Meyer. I hope I've said that right. So he talked on Tim Ferriss's show that his most gifted book of all time is This Is Marketing, and I would love to know what you've taught Danny a lot about marketing. I'd love to know what, hanging out with him, seeing him build Shake Shack, him build Union Square, like what's he taught you?
Oh, Danny has taught me way more about marketing than I taught him. I'm sure of that. The first thing is that Danny is not manipulative. What does it mean to be manipulative? It's when you get people to do things that later on they regret. And there's a lot of hype and hustle in marketing that is used to manipulate people, to get them to overspend or overbuy or overcommit. And then later, now that they know what you know, they're like, oh, I'm sorry I did that. That's not what Danny does. So, when Danny named a loaf of bread after one of my blog posts, he wasn't doing it to manipulate me into spending more money at Union Square. He was doing it because he was trying to send a signal, not just to me, but to the people who worked with him about what things were like around here. And when I see how hard he worked at implementing a no tipping policy, and then when I figured out why it didn't work, these were the acts of somebody who understands time is short and our job is to make things better. And they were also the acts of someone who understood that if we don't experiment, who will? And so I'm inspired by watching the path that he's gone down. I wish there was a way I could get hamburgers out of the equation, but he didn't ask me, and that's what people want to buy. So there you go.
And you talked about the horizontal versus vertical cultures.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference, and why do horizontal cultures solve problems faster? Oh my God, I am so excited. It feels like Hungary is finally swimming in the big leagues. I can't believe this. It's absolutely mental. But delighted to announce that Big Fish, yes, Big Fish, are partner of the podcast. Perry's been on the podcast 3 times. Listeners absolutely love it. Some of our most downloaded and cherished episodes of all time. But Big Fish are behind literally so many brands in your cupboard, in your weekly shop. Charlie Bigham, Year Valley, Tyrrell's, Clipper Tea, Goo, Rana. I mean, mate, the list is longer than the River Nile. But they also share risk and invest in brands that they really believe are a force for good. That are brands that they believe are going to be the next big thing, like Howder, the snack that gives back. But even more exciting news, Big Fish want to speak to the next wave of small challenger food and drink brands that are destined for big things, the racconteurs, the movers, shakers, buccaneering visionaries. So look, if you want to speak to Big Fish and just have a chat, get your brand in front of them, then drop me a message. My mate Louis from Local Beer, Amazing Beer, was in their office, aka La Fish Bowl, last week, chatting to Perry, Freddie and the Big Fish crew. So drop me a message if you would like to speak to them. Bohemi, our beloved sponsor, are helping build the fastest growing challenger food and drink brands. Look, if you're a small brand just starting out and need your first indie stockist, your first 100 stockists to wholesale, Bohemi are the platform to categorically speed that up. But if you're a big brand wanting to get bigger, Bohemi are also insane. They make field sales marble smooth, silky slick. They're just epic. Ollie's been on this podcast twice actually. They saw a 29% uplift in sales when using Bohemi to check major malt listings availability. Insane. 29% uplift by downloading an app. Insane. Lucky Saint, my boy Aaron Duff, who's coming on this podcast in a couple of weeks, he uses it to manage a team of 30 people, and Lucky Saint have unlocked 500 draft listings by using Bohemi. Look, you've got to get involved with this stuff. It's absolutely insane, and it will categorically change your life. It's just the sickest platform. I use it all the time at Islands.
There was a commandant of the U.S. Marines named Krulak, and he coined Krulak's Law, which is that in the 40s and 50s and 60s, wars were won by generals, by strategy. But now they're won by privates, by the people on the front line, by the people who are going house to house and door to door. The lowest paid person in your organization is the person who is dealing with the customers. So if you need to monitor them, measure them, and watch them at all times, something isn't going to scale and something's not going to work. But if you create an institution where the people on the front lines are doing what you would do if you were there, now the culture is working and you have something that's resilient. People like us do things like this. The math is very simple.
How's the math simple?
Well, because how many people worked at Amazon 5 years ago and how many people there were named Jeff Bezos? Right? There's only one Jeff Bezos, but there's all these people who have never met him who are making decisions. If he has to be present in every one of those meetings, it's not going to scale. And the same thing is true with any restaurant that has more than one outlet or any restaurant that's open 7 days a week if the owner isn't there all 7 days. Sooner or later, the person in charge isn't in the room. And, in the case of Starbucks, Howard Schultz took over Starbucks when there were 2 stores. And they didn't sell coffee to drink. They only sold coffee beans. But once a mom and pop place has more than 2 stores, mom and pop can't be at the store all the time. There's just, you run out of mom and you run out of pop. So Howard had to build an institution where it's possible for there to be a magical Starbucks experience, even though he's not there and has never been there. That is the act of scaling something. And you can see that the math doesn't work. You can't say, I have to run faster and work harder. What you have to say is, I have to create a culture, codify the way things are around here so that we get to where we want to go.
One thing I think you may know him actually is a guy called David Hyatt, who's got Hyatt Denim, or you may have heard of him. He's been on this podcast, and I just love what he's doing, creating jeans for creatives. He taught me something that I ask a lot of guests is he said, very simply, scale kills magic. And the bigger you get, the more often you can kind of dilute the magic, the brand. One thing Danny Mayer's done with Shake Shack is he seems to have kept the magic as he's scaled. Could you speak to that? Like, how do people keep the magic as they scale, in your opinion?
Yeah. So first, a small riff on the Hyatt. I had one on Hyatt jeans. I had one of the first pair. The thing to understand about jeans, which also connects to food, is this. No one buys a pair of his jeans who's naked. You're only buying his jeans if you already have a pair of pants. And no one goes to a restaurant when it's the only meal they're ever going to have, right? They could skip this meal. They could go to a different restaurant. We have to begin by saying we are not solving we are the only choice for this person, and this person doesn't have what we sell. That's not what we do when we're in the food business. So that's an aside. But scale kills magic. Scale kills magic until the scale becomes part of the magic. So in the case of Apple, having the same phone as everybody else actually makes your phone more magic for some people. In the case of Shake Shack, knowing that this isn't the only Shake Shack in the world makes Shake Shack more magic for some people. The original Shake Shack had a different magic. The original Shake Shack, which I went to a bunch of times, had a huge line, 200 people, and it was the only one. That's why people were in line. But now, knowing that when your flight lands in Abu Dhabi, there's a Shake Shack, gives you a smile because the scale is part of the magic.
The scale is part of the magic. I love that. I hadn't thought of it like that. What would you say? Somewhere like In-N-Out is the opposite. So In-N-Out only operates in. Is it just in California? In-N-Out. I've still yet to try one. They look fantastic. Those burgers. I know you don't eat burgers, but they look mouth-wateringly delicious, in my opinion. What would you say their magic is there? Is that by constraining it to one? Is it one state? I don't actually know, but what's the magic in that?
I haven't researched it lately. There's a few bits of magic at In-N-Out. First of all, I am certain that you can find a better hamburger without flying to California. That if better means blind taste test, for sure. They're not saying in a blind taste test, this is the best burger. They're saying this is the burger that reminds you of the last time you were in In-N-Out. This is the burger that reminds you of the California life you're living. This is the burger that reminds you of the friends you've had these burgers with. And they also have a secret menu. And the secret menu awards status by offering affiliation. If you know the secret menu, you can order from the secret menu, and that makes you feel like an insider, right? So all of these things cycle around. I think In-N-Out has made a business decision about scale that, for example, Krispy Kreme did not. Krispy Kreme had a brand similar to In-N-Out in that there were people who admired its scarcity. And then they decided to grow big as fast as they could, and they crashed because they couldn't figure out how to make the scale part of the magic. So in the case of In-N-Out, they're making plenty of money. They don't want to hire 15 more vice presidents, raise all this money, and blah, blah, blah. Why bother? They're doing fine. And so scale isn't the point. Magic is the point. You want to find the right scale to provide the magic that's important to you.
And then keeping the magic alive in terms of the scale of more people coming into the business. So I used to work, I think I said on the email, like for a startup, we were super small and we got bigger and bigger and bigger. The bigger you get, kind of just the more stakeholders, the more people at the party, if you want to call it that. So I get the scale, building magic into scale in kind of outwardly, but inwardly in terms of the team, more people, decision by committee, you kind of lose that speed and spark of startups. Is there anything you could speak to on that as like how you get bigger in terms of more people in the business, but keeping those little droplets of magic?
Okay, well, that's a different question. So,
sure.
I've been thinking in the back of my head, a food business where the scale is the magic is Heinz ketchup in the US, because you can safely serve Heinz ketchup to almost anybody who comes to your house. That's why you're buying Heinz ketchup. Here's an example.
Yes.
Okay. So the mistake organizations make when they scale is they forget that certain kinds of decisions are best made by a very small group of people. And they have to decide which business are they in. Heinz will not profit by coming out with 42 different kinds of ketchup, because that will undermine their point that when Tim Cook took over Apple, he took out much of the magic that his predecessor had brought, that the number of new breakthrough products that Apple Computer has launched under Tim's watch is close to zero. But his said, my job is to make the stock price go up. And he did that dramatically. If you think about Microsoft, when Steve Ballmer, the worst CEO of a big company on record, was running it, he was not clear about what he was trying to do. But Satya Nadella is very clear. And the magic that says, yeah, we're going all in on ChatGPT. I don't think there were very many people involved in that decision. That doesn't feel like a committee decided that. And that's how they made this huge inroads on Google. So if I'm running a restaurant or a chain of restaurants, what I need to do is say, this part of the menu is not changing for the next 3 months. Here's a team of people that are going to improve our quality and decrease our prices. And that's their job. But this part of the menu belongs to the innovation team. And I don't want to hear any complaints about how much something on this part of the menu costs us to make. And I don't want to hear any complaints about how hard it is to produce. This is the innovation section of the menu. Innovation got us here. We're not going to stop innovating. That's why it's on a little blue piece of paper called Today's Special. And if we make a mistake here, it's minor, because it's only one night and tomorrow we can do something.
I want to talk about cookbooks. Again, I listened to Tim Ferriss, and I think you've got a whole kind of array of cookbooks. And there's a quote by I think it's Stephen King, which is, "Books are uniquely portable magic." Whether that's him or not, I don't know. But I really believe cookbooks are, I don't even know if this is a word, but like teleportable magic. Like I picked up a cookbook the other day for Mother's Day. And it was the River Cafe, which is a restaurant in London. Mm-hmm. Opened it up, and it was like I had my handwriting from when I was like, I must have been 10, and then it had my mum's like scribbles on it from the recipes she cooked. And in that moment, I was teleported back in time, and it was a really beautiful experience. Yeah. I would love to know, what is your favorite cookbook, and where does that take you? Hi guys, super quick one. So excited. Look, for years I've been badgering on about Hungry the podcast. You're probably bored to death. Thanks for putting up with me. But Hungry is also an agency, and we look after one amazing brand called Islands Chocolate. We've had a great time over the year. We've won listings at a load of wholesalers. We've won Milk and More. We've got our first grocery listing coming very soon, which is very sick. But what I'm thrilled to announce is Hungry is merging with HC Consulting. My boy Harry Clark and his wonderful team, he's an absolute G. They do brand strategy, new business and account management. But why I really love working with Harry, and why we've got on so well over the last couple of months, is Harry was actually the founder of the boozy isolate brand Pops. So he's been in the trenches, he's grafted his face off, he's had the sleepless nights, he's had the turmoil, he's had the triumph. He knows what it is to be a founder. He is a founder. And he's got a proven track record in grocery and out of home. Holy Moly Dips, The Gut Stuff, Savile Drinks, Remio Gelato. So if you're a brand and you're stuck, you're looking for like new business help, you're looking to scale, drop us a message. We'd love to chat. Thank you so much. Back to the old episode.
I brought my mom's copy of The Joy of Cooking to be rebound. And the book person said, you can buy a new one of these for a lot less money. I said, yeah, but it won't have the same stains on the pages. And I have never made the squirrel recipe from inside that cookbook, and I probably never will, but that's not why I treasure it. Cookbooks no longer serve a function when it comes to recipes. That I look up recipes by typing Kenji's name and then whatever it is I'm going to cook. I don't need to go to that shelf over there to look at them. That's not what they're for. They are, as you said, time capsules. They are deliverers of story. They are juxtaposers. And what a bargain for, 20 quid or whatever you guys measure money in, to be able to say, I can go to that place. So there's a cookbook that you've never seen called Beat This. And she's just a great writer, and it makes me smile. I have my friend Apollonia's cookbook, but I also have her dad Lionel's cookbook. And Lionel's cookbook is in French, and I don't read a word of French, but I still have it and I treasure it. I have Chris Schlesinger's Thrill of the Grill, which he signed for me. I have just a lovely collection of authentic cookbooks that weren't written just to sell books. And I'll tell you a brief cookbook story, and then I think we have to wrap up soon. But I was a book packager before I was an author. I invented books. I did the Stanley Kaplan SAT test prep books. I did books on gardening and business. And I came up with a really good idea, which is there was a bookstore outside of Boston that only sold cookbooks. And I got the rights. It was called Jessica's Biscuit. I got the rights to do the Jessica's Biscuit cookbook. And what was the Jessica's Biscuit cookbook going to be? It was going to be one recipe from each of the 100 best cookbooks. And the idea, this is long before the internet, the idea was each one of these cookbook authors would benefit because now their cookbook would be noticed by people who didn't already have a copy. It was like one of those greatest hits record collections. And I called up Judith Jones, who had been Julia Child's editor, and I told her this idea. And she said, you will never publish this book. I will organize every other editor in New York to forbid you from having the rights to any of these recipes. No, you may not do this because taking a recipe out of a cookbook demeans both of them. And I happen to think the internet proved that she was incorrect, but I took that story to heart, that this was somebody who was in the business of telling a story. And just like a novelist isn't going to give you 3 pages of their novel, she didn't want someone to have 3 pages of Julia Child's cookbook.
I love that story. A couple of things. I'm very conscious of your time. There's a few things I'm just like my curiosity's burning to ask you, if that's okay. So you said a brand is not a logo. What would you say in one sentence is a brand?
Brand is a promise. It's what we expect when we open the container.
And what would you say what are some of your favorite? Because I think we look at the US as kind of the creativity hub for CPG brands specifically. But what are some of your, out of everything we've discussed today, the storytelling, the attention, the scarcity, the fear, the affiliation status, what are some brands that are really doing that well in terms of CPG, in terms of like getting brands into, say, supermarkets?
Well, getting a brand into a supermarket has nothing to do with what we just talked about. Supermarkets are there for everyone. Giving shelf space to stuff that only a few people want is something they have to do to keep those people from going somewhere else. But what they really want is to sell things that everyone wants. So that's not the place to look for examples. The place to look for examples are around the edges. Where is the stuff that we would miss if it were gone? Where there isn't an easy substitute, where people will go out of their way and invest time or money to get that thing because it's that thing that comes with the story. So, Pump Street chocolate out of the UK, or Original Beans out of the UK or Switzerland, or Tony Chocolonely, which has such a great story and their origin story is magical. If I put any of those things out around Halloween, it's going to have a totally different impact on kids than if I put out a Hershey bar or a Nestle bar. So that's where the shift happens. My wife runs the biggest craft gluten-free bakery in the world, and I see that people go out of their way to buy her stuff at Whole Foods, go out of their way to visit her stores, because she's offering everyone a seat at the table. That what, by the way, bakery doesn't say this is the best muffin you ever tasted. It says this is a really good muffin that everyone you know can eat because it's gluten-free and dairy-free, but it's also delicious. And that choice, that's her choice. I didn't tell her to do this, but that is what happens when you understand what the change you're here to make is. What would make people miss you if you were gone?
Final question, Seth. So one of my obsessions is The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. And I think we've all got to be our own hero in our own journey in some respects. But I believe brands can make you, or yeah, basically you can become a hero in the brand's journey or story. I think Nike Just Do It is the perfect example. Like, I know when I don't fancy going to the gym, but I say just do it, I'm becoming the hero of that story. How do you think brands can begin to occupy that 1% in people's brains and like help them become the hero of the brand story?
We don't engage with any brand because the brand wants us to. We engage with brands because we want to. What's in it for me? Status, affiliation, fear. How does this help me see myself in the mirror the way I want to see myself? And after the fact, we often tell ourselves the story. So Malcolm Gladwell has pointed out the reason Heinz ketchup is what it is, the reason there's 50 kinds of mustard but only one kind of ketchup, is because it's the first product that a mom lets her 3-year-old apply themselves. So when you eat in the US, when you eat Heinz ketchup, you are thinking of your mom. And when you do that, a whole bunch of things come with it that have nothing to do with the Heinz Corporation. And the same thing's true with the pizza you grew up with, that there's a whole suburban pizza theory that the reason the quality of pizza in the US went down so fast because we like the pizza we grew up with. And so when people move to the suburbs, they eat lousy pizza, so they grew up to think that lousy pizza is what they want. And there are all these different complicated ways that humans calculate what is it to be them. And so, Marcel Proust wrote about it a very long time ago, but it's still true. Give me a Madeleine that reminds me of something, and you don't have to worry about your logo.
Let's wrap that up there. I'm incredibly grateful, Seth. I've really enjoyed that. I'm going to have to send you some Islands chocolate, my friend's chocolate, to see if it's on par with Pump Street's. But yeah, incredibly grateful. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for doing this. Keep making a ruckus. It matters.